Our mission at Greater Europe Mission is to disciple all peoples of Europe through rapidly reproducing churches. Let me give you an illustration of something that's recently happened. We have colleagues who live in a city in the country of Latvia, up in the northern part of Europe, Jonathan and Deborah Bourbeau. A couple of years ago, Jonathan began playing with youth in the city. Many times it was real time consuming. Often he didn't really even want to, but God was leading him to spend time with these kids and invest in the lives of these kids. Over time, they began to be interested in his church, in his walk of faith. They began coming to events to which Jonathan and Deborah invited them, and they began to actually form a youth group. Today, there are 40 kids in that youth group, 20 of whom have come to know Christ. Now, here's the exciting thing as it relates to our mission. And that is, as they come to know Christ, Jonathan and Deborah are saying, it's great that you've come to know Christ, but that's only the beginning of the journey. You need to reproduce yourselves in the lives of your friends and those at school. And so they've challenged them to reproduce themselves in the lives of two people. So when I recently heard that story, I said, you know what, this is a great example of the mission of Greater Europe Mission. Disciple all peoples of Europe through rapidly reproducing churches. And so we're seeing in that one example, reproduction, DNA from the very beginning in the lives of these students. It's very exciting. I was in Basel, Switzerland this past December and was reminded of the reality that the nations are coming to Europe. And I think what I saw in Basel, we were out prayer walking, we were spiritual mapping, we were trying to see what God is doing in Basel, is representative of what's happening in cities all across Europe. In Rome, Italy, in Stockholm, Sweden, Dublin, London, Paris, Lille, France, Frankfurt, Germany. The nations are truly coming to Europe. And so when I was in Basel, I saw business people. I saw Muslim women who were covered. I saw the poor asking for money on the sides of the street. In the Christmas market that I observed, I saw people buying and selling, and I heard people purchasing in Italian, other languages from all around the world. And I thought, truly, if we reach the cities of Europe, we're reaching the nations. We're excited to see the gospel spread through rapidly reproducing churches. This is best illustrated in a story that I've heard recently from Stockholm, Sweden. We have a brother there, Forrest Hendricks, who had a vision to see churches reproduce along a subway line. I've actually seen a map of Stockholm. The inner city is here. The subway line kind of comes out to the southwest. There are 9 stops along that subway line. And Forrest and people with whom he's working have identified followers of Christ at each of those subway stops. And each of those people has said, I would love to start a church here at this stop. And so we're seeing the gospel reproduce. What a great picture along the subway line from the very heart of the city. And so we're seeing churches being planted, churches starting to have that DNA of reproduction. And it's really a tremendous thing. The vision of Greater Europe Mission is God expanding His kingdom through all peoples of Europe to the world. I saw a powerful example of this recently. We came across a young lady who had grown up in a Middle Eastern country in a strict Muslim family. Her father didn't want her to intersect with followers of Jesus at all. But as so many times happens, she left her country to go to college. So she came to college in a town just outside of London, and there she came to know Christ. She was drawn to the people of Christ because of their love for her and the differences she saw in their lives. She met a man, he was a follower of Christ, they married, they returned to her home country to plant churches. When I heard this story, I said, that's it. That's what can happen as the nations come to Europe, come to Christ, and then return to their home country. That's why our task is so urgent. And so for several years, they planted churches in their home country. They're now away from there because of threats on their lives. But what a beautiful example of the nations coming to Europe, being reached, and then impacting their home countries for the gospel. So the task in which we're engaged is an urgent one. I'm reminded, too, of our vision and mission, both of which relate to all peoples of Europe. So We want to bless immigrants. We want to be a part of reaching those who come to Europe, but we're also interested in finding those people who are indigenous to Europe and blessing them as well. I was in Dublin with my family. We met Joe Donnelly at a place called the Anchorage. It's a community center in the middle of a neighborhood that is primarily Catholic, that ministers to people in the name of Jesus. Joe told us a story. My kids were there, and when he finished his story, all of us had our eyes filled with tears. Because when Joe was a young man, he wanted to do everything he could to close that community center. At that time, it was run by someone else. He told stories of throwing rocks at people who tried to come in. He told us stories of taking beer cans and throwing them through windows and breaking the windows of the place, basically doing anything he could to stop the ministry. And then Joe came to Christ. Joe actually told us that the song Amazing Grace was written for him. The grace of God turned his life around totally, and today Joe runs the Anchorage. They produce flowers there. It's one thing. They grow flowers, and the mayor of Dublin has said, we'd like to buy your flowers and put them all throughout the city. The community center is thriving. They minister to families and kids and all sorts of things. They also have on the walls of the Anchorage, I wish you could see it, places all around the world where kids in that community have gone on mission trips. There are Joe Donnellys all over Europe. Doesn't this story stir your heart? Don't you say, you know what, maybe God could use me to go and find that Joe Donnelly, to reach into his life with the love of Christ and make a difference, a profound difference for the kingdom. Our vision is God expanding his kingdom through all peoples of Europe to the world. I hope you'll pray and think about the integration of our vision and mission statements in these next days. We want to be a part of a task that only God can accomplish through you.